You ever feel like the system's set up for you to lose? Like if you don't tick all the right boxes, top grades, top university, rich parents, you're done for? Well, that's the lie most people grow up believing. And that lie, it keeps more people broke and bitter than bad luck ever has. Let me tell you something that should punch through all that noise. You don't need a degree to succeed. You don't need a Forte GPA. What you need is hunger. Well, the kind of hunger that doesn't go away when life smacks you in the face. The kind that wakes you up at 5 a.m. when no one's watching. That pushes you to try fail and try again when your friends are binge watching Netflix for the third night in a row. Success has never been about the perfect raw sum. It's about the person behind it. Let me paint you a picture. You're 16, dropped out of school, 0 qualifications, and you're stacking shelves or cleaning toilets for less than $2 an hour. Everyone around you is looking down at you like you've already lost. And maybe you start to believe it. Maybe, just maybe, you wonder if they're right. But then something inside you snaps, not in a bad way, in the best possible way. You realize something. If no one's going to hand you a shot, you've got to build your own ladder. So you take whatever skills you've got and you start building. You learn not from textbooks, but from life. You fail, but each failure teaches you faster than any professor could. You start a side hustle. You sell something, you flip something. You learn how to talk to customers. You learn how to get told and keep going. You realize that real education happens when money's on the line, when the risk is real, and so is the reward. And before you know it, you've built something. Maybe it's not flashy. Maybe it's not impressive to the people who said you'd be a failure, but it's yours, your business, your win. And when it starts to grow, when you start stacking your first real profits, it clicks is the path they never told you about. See, being a school dropout isn't a dead end. It's a detour. And for some, it's the best thing that could ever happen, because when the safety net disappears, you're forced to build your own wings. And let me tell you, wings you build yourself fly a hell of a lot higher than the one someone else gives you. Now, does that mean dropping out is the secret? No. The secret is what you do after. Well, the mindset you build when you've got nothing and still choose to grind. When you stop blaming your past and start designing your future, that's what separates the winners from the whiners. Here's what school doesn't teach you: how to sell, how to negotiate, how to manage money, how to build resilience, how to bounce back from failure. But the real world will teach you all of it, fast and sometimes painfully. And that pain, that's tuition. That's how you earn your stripes. Well, you learn to turn setbacks into setups. You learn to keep your ego in check when you're winning and your chin up when you're losing. Most people who succeed, truly succeed, weren't born into privilege. They were born into pressure, and pressure creates something special in people who don't quit. Well, they weren't the smartest in the room, but they were the most consistent. They didn't always have the answers, but they were willing to ask better questions. They didn't wait for permission to start. They just started. It's easy to look at a millionaire entrepreneur today and think, yeah, must be nice. What you don't see is the early mornings, the late nights, the failures that nearly broke them. You don't see the doubt, the debt, the days they felt like giving up but didn't. That's what built them. Not some business class or fancy mentor, just raw drive, relentless effort, and the refusal to stay average. Well, so if you're feeling behind, maybe you left school, maybe you feel like you've missed the boat. Don't write yourself off. Don't wait for someone to hand you the map. Well, start walking. Start building, start learning. You've got more in you than you think. And once you tap into that, there's no telling how far you can go. There's a massive difference between knowing something and actually doing it. You can sit in a lecture hall for 4 years, memorizing theories, passing exams, writing papers on things you've never actually tried, and still have no idea how to survive in the real world. That's the truth most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. But discomfort is where growth starts. You see, in business, theory doesn't pay the bills. Action does. The real education doesn't come from textbooks. It comes from launching a product and watching it flop. It comes from negotiating your first deal and walking away empty-handed because you didn't ask the right questions. It comes from trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. That's what builds muscle. That's what builds confidence. Real business is messy. It's unpredictable. It's never going to follow the clean diagrams in your economics textbook. Let's get brutally honest. The classroom teaches you to follow instructions, But business rewards those who write their own. That's why some of the most successful people you'll ever meet don't have a degree framed on the wall. They've got scars. They've got stories. They've got businesses that didn't work, and a few that finally did. They didn't wait until everything was perfect. They didn't ask for permission. They got in the ring and learned how to fight. It's easy to feel like you need all the answers before you start. That's what school trains into you. Get it right the first time, or you fail. But in the real world, you fail first and then you get it right. That's the process. That's how winners are built. You can't learn to swim by reading about water. You have to get wet. You have to choke on a bit before you figure it out. In real business, the market is your teacher. Customers don't care about your credentials. They care about value. Can you solve their problem? Can you deliver what you promised? Can you do it better or faster than the next guy? That's what matters. And the only way to learn that is by doing, building something, testing it, taking feedback and using it to improve. That's not theory. That's survival. Every time you step out and try something, whether it's launching a product, pitching a service, or just figuring out how to get your first sale, you're gaining experience that no classroom can replicate. That kind of learning sticks because it's yours, because you earned it. You didn't read about someone else doing it. You did it. Let's not pretend that theory is completely useless. It's not. It has its place. It can give you context, a framework, maybe even a few shortcuts. But if you don't back that up with real action, it just becomes another thing you forget 6 months after the exam. Experience forces you to remember. Well, when your money's on the line, when your name's on the contract, when your reputation's at stake, you learn fast. You either adapt or get left behind. Well, that's why so many so-called experts don't actually build anything. They write about business, but never run one. They sell online courses on how to make money, but making money is their business. They're great at marketing, but they've never had to ship a product, solve a refund issue, or meet payroll for a team. That's not the kind of advice you want to build your future on. You want advice from people who've been in the trenches. People who've made real mistakes with real consequences. People who didn't just study business, they lived it. That's where the gold is. That's where the shortcuts actually exist. In someone else's scars, not in a 400-page theory manual. The fastest way to learn business is to start one. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't need investors or a 10-page plan. Sell something, anything. Learn how people react, learn what works and what doesn't. Pay attention. That's your business school. Every transaction teaches you more than a semester's worth of lectures. And here's what happens when you commit to real-world learning. You become sharp. You get better at spotting opportunities. You waste less time. You trust your gut more. You stop overthinking because you've trained your instincts with repetition. While others are still stuck in analysis paralysis, you've already made your first sale, fixed your first mistake, and moved on to your next level. No theory in the world can prepare you for the feeling of hearing your first yes from a customer or your first no, for that matter. That emotional roller coaster. Well, that's your training ground. That's where you're forged. We're living in an era where your phone can either be your biggest distraction or your greatest weapon. Most people scroll all day, double tapping photos, watching memes, laughing at 15-second clips, wasting hours they'll never get back. But some people, they're building empires with the same apps. They're turning content into cash. They're using social media to teach what schools never bothered to. And that's the power of online influence. Not the fame, not the likes, but the impact, the ability to reach millions with real advice that actually helps them level up, not theory. But lessons they can use today to change their finances, change their habits, and change their lives. When you talk finance online, especially to a young audience, you've got two choices: talk over their heads and lose them in jargon, or speak their language, meet them where they are, and show them a smarter way forward. The people who are making the biggest difference aren't the ones quoting Warren Buffett every 5 minutes. They're the ones breaking things down in plain English, showing you how to start a side hustle with $0, how to invest with $10, how to stop wasting money on dumb things and start building something that lasts. You can have all the knowledge in the world, But if you can't communicate it, you're invisible. That's why short form content has exploded, because attention spans are short and the best creators respect your time. They don't waste 10 minutes when they can tell you what you need to know in 60 seconds. And in those 60 seconds, they give you something practical, something you can do, not just something to think about. What sets these finance creators apart isn't just the number of followers, it's trust. When millions of people tune in to hear what you have to say about money and they keep coming back, that means something. It means your message is cutting through the noise. It means you're not just another influencer posing in front of rented cars. You're showing people how to actually build wealth step by step without pretending it's easy or fast. And it matters even more when the influence is used to open doors for others. Because let's face it, financial education isn't equally available. Most schools don't teach it. Most parents don't talk about it. Most people grow up learning about algebra, but never once learn how to build a credit score, budget properly, or start investing early. So when someone steps up online and fills that gap, not with theory, but with real, relatable, usable advice, that's powerful. That's how you turn influence into impact. You help someone escape their overdraft. You help someone start their first online business. You help someone realize they don't need to wait until 40 to think about retirement. That ripple effect can change families, communities, even generations, all because someone chose to speak plainly about money and share what actually works. There's also a massive difference between attention and respect. Anyone can go viral doing something stupid, but earning respect from millions of viewers because you're consistently delivering value, that takes work. That means showing up week after week, post after post, answering questions, breaking down the complex, and giving people confidence where there was once confusion. That's not just content creation. That's leadership. And the beauty of today's world is this: you don't need a bank license, a fancy title, or a desk in a skyscraper to become a financial educator. You need knowledge, experience, and the ability to connect. You need to remember what it felt like to be lost, broke, or clueless about money, and use that memory to guide your message. Because if you can speak to the version of yourself 5 or 10 years ago, chances are you'll speak directly to someone out there scrolling right now, hoping to hear exactly what you've learned the hard way. Online influence in finance isn't just about followers. It's about the freedom to share real strategies without the gatekeepers. Well, it's about pulling back the curtain on income streams, showing people how money actually works, and helping them avoid the mistakes that cost you years. It's about making smart money advice accessible, not exclusive, friendly, not intimidating, actionable, not abstract. When done right, that kind of influence doesn't just build a brand, it builds trust. And trust is what keeps people coming back, not just to learn, but to act. Because the goal isn't to create fans, it's to create results, not to impress people, but to empower them. And if you're doing that at scale, reaching millions who never had this information before, you're not just a content creator anymore, you're a game changer. Everyone wants to be rich, but hardly anyone wants to do what it actually takes. That's the problem. People crave instant results, fast money, overnight success. They want the rewards without the patience. And that mindset's why most of them stay broke, because building real wealth isn't about speed. Well, it's about strategy. It's not about what you can flex this month. It's about what you'll still have 10 years from now. The truth is, if it's easy to get, well, it's usually easy to lose. That's why chasing quick money, like gambling on meme coins, blindly following trends, or jumping on every guaranteed hustle, will almost always leave you where you started. What actually works? A plan, discipline, consistency, playing the long game while everyone else is chasing shiny objects that appear the second they stop trending. Wealth isn't a one-time event. It's a series of smart decisions repeated over and over again. It's saving when you don't feel like it. It's investing regularly, not when the market's hot, but every month. Well, rain or shine, it's building a business with systems, not just hype. It's reinvesting your profits instead of blowing them on liabilities that look good on Instagram but bleed you dry in real life. You want to know the real flex. Being debt-free, waking up without worrying about bills, having money work for you while you sleep. That doesn't come from one viral moment. It comes from years of putting in the work when no one's watching, years of making the unsexy decisions that compound over time, like budgeting, learning about taxes, Understanding how compound interest actually works. Let's break that down. Compound interest is called the eighth wonder of the world for a reason. It's not flashy, but it's powerful. You put in a little now, and over time, that money multiplies on itself. The earlier you start, the less you need to invest later. It's not a trick. It's math. And yet most people ignore it because it's not fast enough for their taste. But the people who win, they understand this game is about patience. Well, you don't need to be a genius to become wealthy. You need to be consistent. You need to stay in the game long enough for your efforts to pay off. And that means avoiding the traps that promise you'll get rich next week, because those traps are usually set by someone who wants to get rich off you. The sustainable approach is slower, but safer. It's the approach that gives you control, not just over your money, but over your time, your choices, your future. Because when you build long-term wealth, you're not just stacking cash, you're buying freedom, you're buying options, you're building something that can't be taken away by a bad month or one failed trend, and you don't need to start big. Well, that's another lie people believe, that if you don't have thousands to invest, it's not worth starting. Absolute nonsense. Starting small is how everyone starts. What matters isn't the amount, it's the habit. You invest 50 today, or 100 next month, 200 when you level up. And before you know it, you've built a portfolio that actually grows. It's the same with business. You don't need to start with a six-figure launch. You start with one product, one service, one client. You reinvest the profit, improve the offer, learn the process. Most people give up when they get instant results. But the ones who keep going, who refine their systems, well, who build for the future, they're the ones who eventually scale up in ways the impatient crowd can't even imagine. Long-term wealth building isn't sexy, but it works. It's built on smart habits, automating savings, living below your means, investing consistently, avoiding bad debt, building multiple income streams, and protecting your time like it's the most valuable asset you own. Because it is. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to get it every move right. You just need to keep moving forward, keep learning, and keep building, because wealth is built in silence, in the background. While everyone else is chasing attention, it's built through delayed gratification, choosing long-term gains over short-term pleasure. It's built when you stop trying to look rich and start working to actually be rich, not just in money, but in time, freedom, and peace of mind. One of the biggest problems in the world of money advice is overcomplication. People love to make simple things sound hard. They dress up basic principles with fancy jargon, charts, and acronyms as if the more confusing it is, the more legitimate it. But that's not how real people learn. And that's definitely not how real wealth is built. The truth is, the best advice is often the simplest. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Avoid bad debt. Build things that grow while you sleep. That's it. But most so-called experts would rather drown you in complicated systems, 12-step funnels, and bloated strategies you'll never follow. Why? Because complexity sells. Confusion makes you feel like you need them. Clarity makes you realize you can do it yourself. That's why simplicity matters. Because when advice is simple, it becomes actionable. Well, you hear it, you understand it, and you apply it. There's no mental gymnastics involved. You're not sitting there scratching your head wondering what the MACD divergence indicator is supposed to mean. You're getting up and taking action, and that's what separates people who talk from people who teach. Relatability matters just as much. If someone's teaching you about money, why? While sitting doors in a 10 million mansion, talking down at you like you're an idiot, the message doesn't land. But if they're speaking to you like a real person, if they've been broke, if been overwhelmed, if they've made the mistakes and learned from them, suddenly you lean in, you listen, because they're not preaching, they're sharing. And that makes all the difference. When you explain money in a way people actually understand, you empower them, you remove the shame, you remove the fear, you make it okay to ask questions, you make it okay to know everything right away. Because let's be real, most people never got taught this stuff. They didn't learn about taxes or credit scores in school. They weren't taught how to start a business or negotiate a raise. So when they're hit with financial challenges, they blame themselves. They think they're just bad with money, when the truth is no one ever showed them the basics in a way that made sense. That's why real financial education needs to be honest. No sugarcoating, no pretending that success happens overnight, no filters hiding the grind behind the scenes. People need to know that building wealth takes time. That failure is part of the process, that you're going to mess up, get rejected, lose money and doubt yourself. And that's normal. When someone shares the ugly side, not just the highlight reel, that's when their message becomes real. Because the most powerful lessons don't come from perfection. They come from experience. Well, when someone is willing to talk about their own mistakes, when they admit to falling for scams, wasting money, or procrastinating for years before getting serious, it makes their advice hit harder, not because they're perfect now, but because they've been through it and came out the other side with the scars to prove it. This is what makes a teacher valuable. Not the degrees on the wall, not the size of their following, but their ability to connect, to break things down, to look someone in the eye, whether on camera or across a table, and say, here's what I did. Well, here's what worked. Here's what I wish I knew earlier. That kind of honesty cuts through the noise and gives people something real to hold on to. When advice is grounded in simplicity, it gives you clarity. And when it's delivered with relatability, it gives you confidence. Suddenly, the idea of building wealth doesn't feel so far away. It doesn't feel like something only smart people or lucky people can do. It feels doable. It feels personal. Well, you realize you don't have to change who you are. You just have to change what you do. And that's where the transformation starts. Not with a complex spreadsheet or a 10-module course, but with a simple shift in mindset. If they figured it out, maybe I can too. That thought alone is powerful. It moves you from helpless to hopeful. It lights a fire that keeps burning long after the video ends or the podcast is over. People don't want to be impressed. They want to be helped. They don't need another guru showing off their lifestyle. They need someone who remembers what it felt like to be stuck and who's willing to turn around and explain the way out. Not with a sales pitch, but with a roadmap. One that's clear, honest, and built for real people with real challenges, trying to build real results. Anytime someone gains a massive following online, especially in the world of finance and entrepreneurship, they're going to face criticism. And some of it is fair. When you're teaching millions of people how to make money, how to invest, or how to build side hustles, you carry a responsibility. Not everything is as easy as it sounds. And if you oversimplify the grind or promote tools that benefit you more than the audience, people will call it out. And they should. It's important to be honest about the fact that some financial influencers, even the ones with good intentions, fall into a grey area when it comes to promoting business models like dropshipping, print on demand, or passive income strategies. These models aren't scams. They can work, but they're often presented in a way that downplays the difficulty, the cost, the failure rate, and the grind behind the scenes. Take dropshipping, for example. It sounds incredible on paper. You find a product, set up a store, run some ads, and let someone else handle the shipping while you pocket the profit. But here's what rarely gets mentioned up front. Ad costs are high, competition is brutal, margins are thin, and customer service can become a nightmare if suppliers mess up. Most people trying it for the first time lose money fast. So when creators showcase drop shipping as a quick win or a one-click system, they're not lying, but they're not giving you the full picture either. The same goes for affiliate marketing. There's nothing wrong with sharing tools or platforms you use, especially if they genuinely help people. But when creators push the same tools in every video or link to services they clearly profit from without explaining the risks, it starts to feel more like a sales pitch than a lesson. And that's where trust can get shaky. People deserve transparency. If you're making money from something you're recommending, say it. Be upfront. Well, let people decide for themselves whether it's worth trying, but never let the promotion of the tool outweigh the education of the person using it. Well, the second you care more about the commission than the outcome for the viewer, you're no longer teaching, you're selling. That's the criticism some creators get. They're accused of glossing over the real challenges of building an online business, of making it sound too easy, of showing off results without explaining the years of trial and error that came before. And while not all criticism is fair, there's a real lesson in it due. Well, if you're going to teach people how to build wealth, you better respect how hard that journey really is. Financial education isn't entertainment. It's not just about clicks and views. It's about giving people tools that can change their lives. And when people act on your advice and fail because they didn't understand the full context, that's on you. Well, you can't guarantee success, but you can guarantee honesty. You can show the hard parts. You can talk about the things that went wrong. You can admit when something didn't work out as planned. That's what real mentorship looks like. No business model is foolproof. Print on demand sounds like easy money until you realize your shirt design isn't selling or your margins disappear with shipping costs. Selling digital product sounds scalable, but only if you've built trust first. Starting a YouTube channel is free, but the grind to get traction takes months, sometimes years, and the majority of channels never make a full-time income. People deserve to hear these things because hearing the truth upfront is what helps them make smarter decisions. It saves them time, money, and unnecessary frustration. It also raises the standard across the entire creator space. The more people who are honest about what it really takes, well, the less room there is for fake gurus and one-click millionaires who are only rich because they're selling the dream, not living the grind. It's also important to acknowledge that affiliate income and monetized content can be a legitimate part of someone's business, as long as the content still provides real value. There's nothing wrong making money from your platform. The problem comes when the money becomes the motive and the viewer becomes the product. That's when things start to rot from the inside. To maintain credibility, you have to prioritize the truth, even when it's not sexy. You have to show people the whole staircase, not just the top step. And when something sounds too good to be true, you should be the one saying, here's what you're not being told. That's what builds long-term trust. That's what separates educators from marketers. Because while flashy videos might win attention today, only trust wins loyalty over time.